Hey everyone. Let me get out of OBS. It's acting funny again. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good.
Happy Friday.
Ready to get started.
Hey, Jesus.
I introduced a colleague of mine to the powerful world of macros yesterday, and he was blown away.
What did you say you introduced him to?
The powerful world of macros.
Macros. Okay.
Yeah. I'll have him using AHK in a couple more weeks, probably.
Like word macros?
No, in this case, actually, Audacity macros.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
There's this. Yeah, I think macros are a great way to just the term, right? To help people not be so afraid, because it sounds simpler. So pretty exciting news this week on with V2 now being official. And
Yeah. Actually, this is gonna be a new era. That's something that not many people are used to. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
yeah, and again, to be clear, you can, there's no performance benefit from making the switch. Also, you can easily have V1 and V2 installed and
Yes.
keep using it. And I was writing someone, I'm like, the vanilla version, the V0, even though it is deprecated, it's still around. Like, I mean, V1 is going to be around for a long time. That's like what, 10, 12 years ago, Jose? Is it?
Yes, actually, when I started out with AutoHotkey, though already AutoHotkey L was a thing, and V1 I started when the transition was happening to AutoHotkey L, is what it was called at that time. And as soon as L became mainstream, vanilla version was deprecated, and that was about, I don't know, 13 years ago. So, but still, there's a lot of people who use V1, like the original one, because they like it or whatever, for whatever reason. But then every time they wanted to do something a little bit more complex, they were having issues. Now, on what is going to happen right now is basically the same. We're switching now to V2. Just to be clear, V1 and V2 are not compatible, which was the difference between vanilla and V1. Vanilla and AutoHotkey L were compatible. Now they are not. I saw just a question right now about libraries in V1, and no, that's not going to work because they're definitely not compatible. There are workarounds, but there's no need for it. So once V2, but V2 is already the official one. They haven't changed the forum yet, but once that is changed in the forums, most of the code you're going to see there is V2. So anything that you have in V1 or any questions you have in V1, you will have to go to a dedicated part of the forum to get answers to that. But no, they're not going to work together. So if you had a library in V1, it's not going to work in V2.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because of how the forum software works, all of the IntelliSense highlighting is going to be for V2. So even when you find V1 on the forum, it's going to be weird.
I would definitely hope, because there is no reason why they cannot have both. So it's just a matter of whether they're going to spend the time to do that. So
Last take. I mean,
right. So because basically, I don't know if the way how they use it is a library that is out there that you can switch languages. So if they have the language for V2 separate from V1, there must be a way that it could be set, but that requires a little bit of effort that I don't know if they're going to take the time to do that. So I cannot answer that question.
And Anthony, if V2 HK Studio is compatible with V2, no, not. I had talked to Isaias about, it was actually funny because he misunderstood my question. He thought I wanted it rewritten in V2, and I'm like, no, I just want to be able to use Studio to edit V2. He's like, yeah, it wouldn't be that hard. I've talked to Maestrith. He has no interest in it. But we might still at some point. Now, we did just the other day do a video on using SiteThrottle Hotkey with V2 and configuring it in Site. It's a great editor. I mean, I still have it installed and I've been using it. I just don't use it for AutoHotkey coding, but with V2, because VS Code is such a behemoth, like it's so big and it's an amazing tool. Like I'm not knocking it at all. It's just it's really big, and
it's not for the casual thing of let me just write a few lines of code. It's going to take more time for it to load and have the extensions than actually coding it. But let me clarify something. You can edit scripts, V2 scripts in Studio. It's just that you cannot run them because Studio does not run with the
highlighting.
The highlighting would be a little bit off. You can modify.
There's errors though, right? I mean,
but
the point is, all AutoHotkey files are text files, so you can use anything to edit anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just it's not going to work as an IDE, I guess is maybe a better way say it.
I think John wanted to say something.
Yeah, my question is about the maintenance of V1. So how long do you think it will be maintained? For example, if something changes in Windows 11 that breaks something or needs to adjust something in V1.
Let me say in general, what Lexico said is that he's not going to be adding new features.
Yeah.
So new features are not going to be added. Fixing, he might still do that.
Yeah, agreed.
But it is not his priority. So if something breaks in Windows 11, he might be fixing it in V2 first, testing it, and doing a bunch of stuff before porting it to V1. We do have Giswig, who is actually doing a bunch of things in V1. The only thing is that that is subject to Lexico's approving the changes, which they usually do not agree in a lot of things. So changes might be a little bit slow. What he said is, if you want, you can just make a copy of V1 and keep working with it. But again, it is not going to be, that's not his main effort. So that's the reason why I definitely just say, hey, switch to V2 for new stuff, and that's it.
Yeah, because I will switch to V2 for new stuff, but for quick access pop-up, I won't convert it. And it's a software that is highly dependent on Windows and on AHK being able to leverage Windows features. So if something changes, and for example, it had no impact on AHK, but it could have had, it's the new tabs that you have in Explorer in Windows 11. The Windows Explorer.
Yeah, I remember you were,
you don't have in Windows 10. And and there are workarounds to manage, for example, to change a folder in the current tab. But if you don't do anything, it will change a folder in the first tab, regardless of the other tabs that you have. So there's a solution without having AHK itself being changed. But it could happen that something breaks. A native feature of AHK that would require some fixing. Hopefully not, but that's my only concern about V1 survival.
Well, that's the key part here. Survival is definitely not guaranteed, and in the next 5-10 years it's probably going to happen that something breaks and AutoHotkey V1 is not going to work exactly as intended, and it's probably not that it's not going to be fixed. It's just that it's going to take a long time. So that's something to take into account.
If it breaks quick access pop-up, maybe someone more crazy than me will try to convert it to V2.
Well, you know what? When I was looking at your code, sadly, you have way too many GUIs. And the converters right now do not handle GUIs. So it is going to be a lot of work converting it to V2. Not because it's difficult, because most of there's a lot of things, for example, that you can easily fix with find and replace. Okay. What will be a challenge is setting up the G labels, because in V2 there is no concept of G labels. But most of the commands like GUI, add, edit, and so on, that with a search and replace can be done.
But once you find and replace, you have to test, and it will not work until there's hours and hours of work. So my approach would be to start with the core, small core, build a menu, show a menu, and then add the other feature, copy paste from the V1 to V2, and then converting piece by piece and testing, because you cannot test 30,000 lines at once after find and replace.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
So your approach would work for smaller scripts, but not for something that is an application of full-fledged board.
I will comment something after Joe says what he was going to say.
I think you guys are way underestimating the power of ChatGPT and other tools like that. And
maybe
it might be a year from now, right?
Yeah, but probably that will help a lot.
Yeah.
I was just going to comment, and this is in general for anybody creating programs bigger than a few hundred lines, right? So as soon as you start into the 5,000 lines, 10,000 lines, there is a concept in programming which is separating or making this split between how you show the information, where you store your information, and the functions that your program does. Those are three separate entities. And what that helps with is that if the way how you display the GUIs or the data changes, it is not going to break the functionality of your script or your program. And that's the reason why we do it, exactly because of the problem
what we call three tiers
MVC
development. Yeah,
or the
three tiers.
MVC, yeah.
Yeah.
The model view,
Yeah.
if I remember, the C was something else, but those three, the model view controller.
Yeah, but that's not the
type of
approach that you have
approach.
when you start something small by copying a script and then adding features over the months and over the years.
Yeah, no, that way
Yeah.
they're going to be
That's what
so
happened
tied
with
together,
UAP.
right?
Yeah.
They're going to be so tied together that if you change anything in the GUI, it actually breaks the functionality of the program.
Because
GUI
creates variables and then you use
Right.
these variables and you may change them. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Joe.
that happened to me with one of
MVC. Yes, thank
yeah.
you, Jesus.
Joe, at least with like a conversion from V1 to V2 of Autohotkey, the way I understand how ChatGPT works, right, it's trained like as a language model, it's trained on all these documents. So unless somebody goes out there and makes a bunch of documents on how to convert V1 to V2, then will ChatGPT ever be able to do it?
It will, because they're thinking about connecting it to the internet, so those documents are already there. That's not the issue. It's just the version that we have right now is not connected to the internet, so it cannot pull that information. We are trying to train it for ourselves, for V2 specifically, but it has been a little bit of a challenge. We've managed to get the hardest part working. It's just a matter of I haven't checked, Joe, about the if that thing is already available, because we uploaded a training file, but there is a queue. So there's a lot of people training the thing. So we don't know. By the way, Joe, you're mute. I cannot, just in case. So in any case, is as you say, Scotty, it has to have the documents. It's just that it is a process right now.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't just have to have like V2 documents and V1 documents. It has to know how to convert between them.
No, not really. No, that's part of the interesting part about ChatGPT.
You can just figure that out, huh?
It figures it out. It actually does that.
But that's where I was watching a video on how to train ChatGPT, and it was like, hey, when you're learning something from scratch, you do, and I remember I'm a data scientist, right? Like I did it for 20 years. So I understand a lot of it. The example they had, it required very little amount of data to train it in what they were doing. And that was because it had already learned so much from a lot of other data, right? Yeah. So when you are training it in the way you're talking, Scotty, it doesn't take nearly as much data, because you have an example. I'm saying, when I do this, do that. When I do this, do that. And it very quickly learns. If you don't take that approach and you give it a bulk of data, it can still learn. It's just not going to be nearly as fast, right? As accurate. So I think there's at least two, maybe there's more, right? But there's at least two approaches on how things learn.
The good thing about it, and this is the part that not many people understand, the changes between V1 and V2 are not as stark as you might expect them to be. Yeah. There is just one change that is going to be very big, which is that everything is now an expression. Yeah. And the only thing that means is, instead of using the % signs for the variables, you just use the quotation marks for the text. That's the biggest change.
Is there a way that you can pull up the like an outline of the course that we were almost done with?
Yeah, actually,
we're all doing a course on converting V1 to V2.
Yep.
Well, not converting, but I mean, it's the person converting.
Gotchas. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's training, for those that are used to V1, here are the things to look out for. Here are the big differences. Right?
So guys, just a thought. I believe the V2, the GUI stuff is all different.
Yeah, it is.
Big time. It's not just, you can't. So if you got GUIs in your program, you've got to do some real work to mess about with the GUIs.
That's right. Now, the thing is that not many people use the GUIs that often, so it's not going to affect that amount of people. I've known Joe for a long time, and he still says, like, no, I haven't coded that many GUIs, and he has been coding this for.
Well, no, my
years,
GUI stuff, my GUI stuff.
No, in your case and John's case, it's going to be painful.
Yes.
If you try to switch, especially because your scripts are very big, but for most people, and that's what I was trying to get at, what I was answering to Scotty, is that not many people use GUI, and the changes are not going to be as hard on the switch as many people think. But there are a few things that you have to take into consideration. I don't know if you guys can see my screen right now. So right now we're going to be talking about editors, configuring the launcher. The launcher is the one that switches between 1 and V2. We're going to talk a little bit about the requires. This concept here about that variables can be set or unset is something totally new in V2 that is not there in V1. It's not a big change, but it's good to know about it. We have talked about the warnings and errors.
I think it needs to say more/better warning.
Yeah.
They're far better.
Yeah, they are really good. Now, from here on is where it starts affecting people. Like the assignment operand, the equal sign is gone because people use the equal sign to assign literal text. That's gone. That assignment is just for comparison now. The assignment is done with the colon equals all the time. That everything is an expression. That's the reason why it's one of the first videos we're going to have, like one of the earlier videos, because that's the change that is going to be there for everybody, right? How to escape quotation marks, which is extremely good in V2. That's something really good to know. Continuation sections change a little bit. Is a little bit annoying. We go into it. The auto execute section. Remember that in V1, you had a lot of issues with auto execute sections, especially when you're moving or merging two scripts. You don't have that in V2 anymore. I explained why and how it works. Multi-line global hot strings and hotkeys now require braces. That's gonna annoy a lot of people. That's gonna be annoying. But we talk about why and how it looks and what the big difference is. Global variables work inside functions. That's perfect. I explained how that works and why. Commands
There's a really confusing one though, I think, for a lot of people, because that's a big change. Scope really changed in V2.
Right, and that's basically the main change in the scope. Yeah. After that, everything else works similarly, but the global variables inside functions, that's the one that kind of like trips people up. Commands cannot start with a comma. So if you're used to doing message box, comma, like true, like this, that's gonna right away show an error, those kind of things. You cannot put spaces between the command and its parentheses. I explained why and what it means, because you can do it, but it doesn't mean what you think it does. Some commands change parameter orders. Some commands change name. That's the one that is annoying. It's going to annoy some people because some commands that you're used to using are going to have a different name or are not going to be available at all. A lot of subcommands were split into their own functions. To Guys's point, GUIs and menus are objects now. They're not the normal ones as you are used to, and that's a very big change. This one is interesting. Objects, maps, and arrays are different entities, and they behave differently. I go into a little bit of detail about what they are, how they work, and how objects cannot be looped without their own properties and why. It will make sense once I explain what is it that we're thinking about in this case. You will understand why you have to use that method by itself. You cannot use by ref anymore. It is still not removed, but it's gonna give you a warning if you use by ref, because there's another way of doing that. And we talk about a little bit more advanced stuff. I just touch upon it, which is buffers and how DLL calls are tricky to translate. If you are used to using DLL calls, or if you are trying to convert a V1 script to V2 and it has a lot of DLL calls, that's going to be a bit of a nightmare. It's not that easy. Actually, converting a GUI to V2 is easier than doing anything that has to do with DLL calls if you do not understand the concepts of it and how to use buffers to do DLL calls. So that's the part that for many people, the transition, most of it. So from here on, most people, this is what is going to affect most people. And with the videos that we have done, it is a 2-hour course. You will have a very good grasp about all of that. So most people will switch to V2 without too many complications. As soon as you start with GUIs and objects and DLL calls, which is a little bit more advanced, that's where you would have a little bit more hiccups until you grasp the concept. That's all.
This is a quick cheat sheet of just, hey, what to look for, right? Like if you're, I put the URL in the YouTube chat. I'll throw it in the other Zoom chat. But if you sign up now, you get 20% off, or heroes get 25%, of course. Yeah. But yeah, it's we're almost done with it. I think next week it should be out. Yeah. But hey, if you don't take the course, just look at what we just outlaid there, and that's what your study guide, right? So
yeah, definitely.
But we were both kind of, even though we knew, because we saw V2 is, he announced it what, a month ago, roughly, of the whole.
Yeah, in December. Yes, that's right.
But I was like, well, when is it going to be the official language? I don't know why I thought it was still going to be a bit longer, but the fact that we're there, I'm ready to switch, because if you read Lexicos's post of the whole why you should switch, and the big one for me is, and which actually was funny, because I told Isaiah, I said, do you know what the word deprecated actually means if you look it up? And it was really far less than what I thought. It was basically saying, hey, don't use that. Like it's, you just said it.
It's a suggestion.
Yeah,
more than anything, right?
It doesn't mean it's dead. And he even says, it's dead as far as it's not being developed with new features, but it's going to be around for quite a while. So
it's like don't use that. There's a better way now.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. There's a better way.
Right.
And just, I don't know, before I do this, does anybody has any questions regarding, AutoHotkey or anything that you wanted to?
Well, Ray had some questions.
And I had one.
Let's get that. Yeah. Okay. So let's get those, and I will show something after that.
Cool. Ray, what were you?
So I'm up. Okay. How do I get the option to share screen? Okay, which one? Okay, here. Okay, do you wait, click on share. Okay. I watched myself in one of your videos, and now I'm self-conscious.
Yeah.
That happens. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Joe was kind enough to recommend that I just use, I don't know how to pronounce it, that SCIT.
Site. Yeah.
But I'm so, I'd really like to be able to use VS Code. Now, I used to get messages here with guidance about how to deal with these, but I'm not getting them anymore. I wonder if I've changed something here in the extensions so I lose that.
Let me first of all, and this is something that we mentioned also in our course. Unless you're actually going to spend most of your time coding, like if you're a programmer and you're going to be coding for other people or making scripts, we do not really recommend Visual Studio for you, because it is just like a jackhammer, and you're just trying to put a nail on a wall. It's like a very big tool for a very small task.
Okay.
So if you are used to SiteThrottle Hotkey, we really encourage you to just use that, because it's simpler. It's just very simple.
You see, that's the thing. I'm new to both of them.
Right.
Actually, I'm going back and forth between one and the other.
I would say for you, Ray, if you're just going to do small scripts, SiteThrottle Hotkey is way better, because you don't have to configure all that much. When you install it in the same folder where AutoHotkey is installed. That's it. It's configured. You don't have to do anything else. Just change the platform, which I think we mentioned in our video, right? We did mention that because VS Code you have to have the right extensions. You have to have the right debuggers. You have to configure the debugger. You have to configure way too many things. And in the end, it might still not work on your computer 100%. So it is for people who are a little bit more into that, yeah, after you spend an hour configuring it, it's going to save you months of things. But in your case, I think it's better to go with SiteThrottle Hotkey.
Okay.
I'd even go as far as, like I said, I'm not using VS Code, right?
Yeah,
when I move to V2, I'll be switching to Site, just because VS Code, it's like I said, it's an amazing tool. Don't get me wrong, but it's just overkill for what I do.
Just imagine Photoshop to crop an image,
Right.
Dude.
Yeah.
Photoshop
Yeah,
has
color.
so many.
What's
It
the-
has so many
versus
new
the paint
things.
in Windows, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, if all you're trying to do is to put up some text or put up a thing, paint is fine, right? You don't need Photoshop with 8 billion things and things you can do.
Right, exactly. Just wait for it to load just to go ahead and crop the freaking image, and that's it. Like that's
So-
what would happen with VS Code and program.
So to even finish that up, so a week and a half ago, when I was talking to Zayas about creating the course on V2, I said, well, shit, we can't create this course until we have an editor, an easy editor for editing V2, because we can't try to get people to the average person. VS Code is just way overkill. So we dug into SiteThrottle Hotkey and found some of the problems when we went to install it. We had some problems. And we're like, if we can't figure out, why would other people, like that's too much. So we walked through and figured out how to install it properly and how to make it work properly. And that's why we made a video.
Before we switch to the other questions, let me answer this one from Anthony that is related to Site. How easy it is to use Site with Git? No, in that case, Git, so Site does not have Git integration. Everything that you have to do with Git, then in that case would be on the command line. If you don't know how to use Git in the command line, it's going to be very tricky. That's where VS Code comes in handy, because it has Git integration, which makes it easier for you to do a lot of things graphically instead of the command line. But again,
but I would argue if you're using Git, you're a programmer.
Yeah,
You'd be using VS Code.
Yeah,
I don't use Git, right? Like I have everything under Dropbox, so all of my stuff is backed up and I can restore. But and it's painful for Isaiah, but it's not too painful. But we have little conflicts here and there where he has to figure some minor things out. But it's just why, again, if you're using Git, chances are you're a programmer, right? Like that's the way I look at it.
You are already on a next level.
Yeah,
but it's not the same as just creating a hot string, right?
It's actually one of the things I keep telling people. It's one of the determining factors, I would say, who uses VS Code, because the Git integration is crazy powerful. And I watch Isaiah do this stuff, and I'm like, I get it. It's amazing. If you're sharing scripts with other people, or you're sharing, or you have multiple versions of your scripts over time, and you want to be able to restore, it's great, right? But again, like I don't do that. If I create a script, I create the which, like the handlers one that I created the other day. I created the template for it. I'm like, hey, it kind of works, and then I give it to Zayas and say, okay, polish this up, make it better, do whatever. But I hand it off. I'm not creating the versions, the advanced versions, if that makes sense.
That's right. So now you said that somebody else had a question before Brian, was it Brian?
No,
Well, I think.
sorry.
Yeah, I think we had a couple questions.
Okay.
Thank you for that guidance regarding VS Code. I'll switch to, I don't know how to say it. How do you say this? SCIT.
Site.
Auto code. Site? You guys say site? Okay, site. No, okay. So the question, I was having real trouble, and somewhere down here, I was getting the message, auto key not recognized. It appears that I fixed it last night. I think what it was I didn't have the path right, the Windows path. I didn't have that right. And so I put in some paths, and I'm not getting that error now. I know it's
no, don't worry. But yeah, so let me show you something here at the top.
So I should stop sharing to let
No,
you.
no, no, no.
here.
So
Oh,
no,
here
so
at the
right
top.
there,
Okay,
here
got
at the
it.
top, can you click there?
I can click there.
That's what switches between versions of AutoHotkey. All right, so you only have V2.
Yeah, the
right,
thing.
so-
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, did you uninstall V1 already?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, yeah.
Honestly, this last week I had so much trouble with V2 and V1, not knowing which script was. I said, "The hell with
had
it!
to go.
I'll just get rid of V1."
No, so then in that case, just select one of these two. I would go with 64-bit. That's the most, and that's it. Because if you left the one that set default selected, it probably will not find AutoHotkey, and that was the error that you were getting. But now it will be executing V2. So now if this script is not V2 compatible, you might get some errors until you fix them. So if you click on run right now, just click on run and let's see what happens. Now it's running fine.
Yeah,
There it
it's a simple script. In fact, I've commented out in things, for future review.
But for anybody watching this, notice that this looks like a V1 script. Nothing changed. If you see a V1 script and you see a V2 script, a lot of it is going to be very similar. It's in a different situation that it changes a little bit. So, do you have another question before?
No, that's it. Thank you very much. I'll just stop sharing.
No worries. So I don't know, Joe, if you had somebody else in queue before Brian, but if not, then we go with Brian's.
Oh, Jean said he had a question. I was teasing him. Right. He didn't count.
I'm just trying to understand, and I think I got it. Site, you can set the platform to V1 or V2.
Yeah.
Then when you press F1, you get the help from V1 or V2. But what I found that if you switch the platform while you're using Site from V1 to V2 or the other side, the other way, you still get the help file that was set when you loaded Site.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you change the platform, you have to close Site and reopen it. Then you get the help. Unless I missed something, that's my question.
There is something that you can do. Yeah.
The reload platforms option.
Where is it?
So you see on the toolbar on the top, on an empty space, just right click and you will get a little bit of a menu.
Let me just start Site.
Yeah, that would be great. So if you at the
People
top
wondering why
on the right side, just go to an empty space. Yeah, just go to the empty space on the toolbar.
On the toolbar, okay.
Right, that will have a reload platforms there.
You've shown that.
The reload platform button up.
Reload platform here.
Yeah, that should take care of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was my question.
Well, we were surprised when we saw that there because we're like, why doesn't that automatically get called
or refreshed? Yeah.
Yeah, right. It seemed really weird because it seems like that's something that should happen every time you choose between V1 and V2. So we might look at that at some point and figure out how to add that and suggest it back to Finks and say, hey, why don't you?
Yeah. Anthony says, like, the switch to V2 potentially makes it easier to decide on an editor. Just use Site. I would say Site if you're not a programmer. That's it. As soon as you're actually coding a lot and have a lot of things to share or keep track of, Site, it's not that it cannot do it, it's just that it doesn't have Git integration, and the Lexer or the highlighting, the syntax highlighting is way better in VS Code than in Site, but that will not affect a lot of people who are not programmers. That's all.
Would Studio work well with V2?
I think you were not here when we.
Okay, no, I had to call come in. I had to go nip out.
Yeah, no. So AHK Studio does not have highlighting for V2, does not run V2 scripts, and Maestri said he doesn't really care about it. So we're just saying, just use Site.
We still, like I said, it might at some point, if we have some bandwidth, take a look at converting, because Isaiah said, it wouldn't be too hard to update the stuff, but
If it is just for running a file, I just have to switch the path probably that is taking for the interpreter.
and swapping
That's
out the very
At least for running. Now for the
Actually-
lexing, it should be.
I don't. Well, I think we were talking about making that as a cheat sheet, but there were actual command names that changed also. Correct? There's like a list of which we were like, yeah, that's interesting. So you definitely have to have an updated file for the IntelliSense because it's different. Besides a lot going away, right?
Because I really like Studio, and I'm thinking, so here's V2. I'm going to have to re-educate myself with GUIs, and my editor's changing now.
That is exactly why I was hesitant to make the switch in the first place, because I knew I didn't want to get into VS Code. But now that we have SiteThrottle Hotkey, I'm like, okay, I know that editor. It's just it basically you don't even notice it because Site is so basic. It's easy to pick up.
For installing V2, somebody is just asking, just download the file, double click, that's it. There is nothing else. The only thing that you have to do after installing, it will pop up by itself. It will show up right away. It says configure the launcher. Now, so the launcher, when you click on it, it will allow you to decide what should happen if you double click on a V1 script and what should happen when you click on a V2 script. That's the only thing that you have to configure. Everything else is a normal installation. It's very simple.
Can I just clarify that V1 is not going to vanish? Basically, if anything's running in V1, it'll stay. It'll stay as it is.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Everything is going to stay there. Don't worry. So long as you have it installed, it will be fine. And you can have V1 and V2 at the same time.
Yeah.
Don't worry. So all of those things, again, you should not have to worry that much. Now, we are encouraging and we really recommend you to your new scripts, start it in V2, start learning V2, because V1 is not going to be supported that much longer. That's all.
There's a difference between not being supported and disappearing, you know.
Well, the other thing I would say, and yeah, I agree with that guy, but this is what I've said for quite a while about V2. V2, if you've never programmed at all, you're completely noob, never done anything, it's a little higher of a bar to get started in. For all of us who have clearly been using AutoHotkey some, you will prefer V2 once you make the switch. Right. Like I totally agree with that. It's the syntax. When you look at the GUIs too, my Lord, maybe I will start creating GUIs because the code is so much easier to understand. But for most, it's the people that I'm concerned about are the ones that have never used AutoHotkey and they come in and they start with V2, and it used to just be a little easier to get started with. Right. And it's just going to be a little bit harder. It's not the end of the world. Right. It's just, but for all of us, I definitely think everyone on this call, everyone watching, you're going to love V2. I've not heard anybody who used V2, and said, "Oh, I hate it." No, everyone loves it.
Yeah, it's just the addition, and this is something that I think I haven't mentioned in the course or anything else, but this should be mentioned. If you already use expressions in V1, that's it. That's the main change. V2 is mostly expressions. That's it. If you know how to use expressions, you already had half of the battle. The problem with new people is, especially people who are not programmers, is that they are not used to the concept of expressions. So that's an additional hurdle that they have to go through. Oh, now for creating a hotkey, now I have to understand what an expression is. That's it. If you already understand it, nothing new to learn, right? So in any case, I would say, let me show you something very interesting. Right. One of the biggest things that so you can tell why most of the times we think that V2 is better is that it simplifies a few things. In V1, whenever you had an expression, right, you had to put the expression in quotation marks like this. And if you wanted to have a quotation mark inside your text, like a literal quote, you had to double it like this. I don't know if you remember that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
And
or just use equal sign.
Or use the equal sign like this, right? And without the quotation marks, right? So let me just do this. I would just copy this up and then just do. These were the two ways for you to do that. You would just either use an equal sign and everything is a string, or whenever you're in an expression, you have to double quote like this, especially, and it was messy, especially if you needed a variable in between. If that was a variable, then you would have to put 3 quotation marks like that. And that was amazingly annoying. It was now in V2, you don't. You either, if you're putting normal quotation marks, the single ones are escaped. And the other way around, if you use single quotes outside, the double quotes are escaped inside. Or you can use the backtick to escape as you usually would. It just makes it easier for a lot of things.
I mean, the backtick is used for everything else, so that will be concurrent, consistent.
And that's the point. What he tried to do with V2 is make it more consistent. Everything is easy. So now, of course, there is a learning curve. There are things that are different than what you're used to, but in general, that's the reason why Joe said most of the people here might not make it, might not feel that it's so bad to switch to V2, is because if you're having a lot of issues, a lot of your questions, Guy, that you come back with, hey, this is not working as I'm the, when you go back to V2, you're not going to have that question, because most of the questions that you have is because
syntax related.
Is syntax related. That is correct. And why is this not working as I'm expecting? Yeah, because V1 has a lot of exceptions to certain rules.
Well, syntax won't be a problem once we get ChatGPT working properly. So.
That's for sure. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Because I can see using that to write smaller blocks and putting those blocks within the program, or giving it the whole program and say, check the syntax on this program or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Now, we will see how the transition is. I suspect it's not going to be as harsh as some people expect it to be, but that remains to be seen, because even though V2 is stable, it hasn't been tested that much. Not many people are using it. Yeah. When people start using it, that's when we're going to see how really the language is, and hopefully it's not going to be a mess. That's the only thing that I'm expecting. It's not going to be a mess. That's all.
So I see Hellbent's here. I was just asking.
He's saying no.
If he was planning to switch to V2, and he said not anytime soon. Yeah. Which is funny because he mostly creates GUIs. But the other thing though is he creates custom GUIs, right? So maybe it won't be as
well. I understand him a lot because he uses a lot of DLL calls.
Yeah.
So now he has a steep learning curve, because now he's not really just using the standard AutoHotkey commands. For him, the learning curve is going to be a little bit harder if he doesn't have knowledge in other languages. If he doesn't know C++, it's going to be a little bit confusing dealing with buffers and pointers. They don't work. They don't behave the same way.
Don't the DLLs work the same way in V2 as in V1?
They are similar, but there's a few concepts that are not going to be the same. They are not easy to translate, and it is a learning curve. That's for sure.
Is this something that, is there a program that will convert V1 to V2? I'm not talking about just the syntax. I'm talking about the GUIs. Is there, or can ChatGPT do that? Saying convert this.
No. It will at some.
And it will at some point. But at the moment, it's a hard manual.
Oh, there's we can't get ChatGPT to write anything in V2. We tried.
And I would say, just wait for lexicos. because he mentioned or hinted at the fact that he's having the compiler, because the interpreter, you see the interpreter that reads the script and does the thing that tells you if the script is wrong. That thing, which is the best tool there is to know if an AutoHotkey is correctly written, he will be having it in a way that other tools can connect to it, which means that a converter to V1 from V1 to V2 using the AutoHotkey interpreter would be the best tool to convert. Now, he hinted at it. I don't know if he's going to do it, but at some point we might have a very good converter. So just wait for lexicons. It's just going to take a little time, but I think it's going to be a thing soon. Ray V1. So answering to Ray, V1 is, the current V1.1 is the one that it knows about. It doesn't know anything.
But even then, it probably wouldn't write the requires directive, right?
No, I don't think so.
Directive, so
right.
It doesn't even know the latest and greatest version of V1, but
no.
Has anyone else got any other questions?
Okay, thanks.
Hey, I have a question if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Hey, so I'm pretty new to AutoHotkey, just been using it for a couple weeks. Your intro video has been really good. I'm just wondering how I can send like random texts. I can share my screen.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool. So I was just wondering, because I'm using it for like sending out Instagram DMs, like outreach. And I'm just wondering, like, when I enter like a code, like how I can send like a lot of variations of the text, of like this text here.
Okay. Variations, as soon as you think about variation, you have to think about a variable. That's it.
No, I think let me try to answer him, and then he can tell me if I totally missed the boat. What I think you would need to do is to go create like 20 different, you manually create the 20 different variations that you're thinking of, and then you just randomly select one of those.
Right.
Right.
But you have to have it in a variable, which is what I was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, his point right now is just he wants to. My point is this: you're not suggesting you would parse that and randomly move the words around, right?
No, I'm not suggesting that. No. So let's say that there are 5 different messages that he wants to send, and he wants to pick one at random, which is what you're saying. Yes. Now, and now that what I meant is you will have to have a variable that contains the 5 messages, so that then you can use, for example, the random function.
Do you mind if I could takes control, or you can do it on your end?
I can do it on my end. Yeah, I can show.
Yeah, you can take control also.
No, it's okay. Let me do it in my
the code itself is pretty simple.
Right. It's just the idea of what you are trying to do.
So I wrote something like this where it goes. I have a couple hundred lists of kind of fun memes that I could post. I could hit a hotkey and it would go read. I put them in a file, so it was just cleaner. I'd read the file, randomly select a line from that file, and then I could go to LinkedIn and Facebook and paste them very quickly. It was very
right. First message, and you can go ahead and
once you stop this. Well, we have 2 people sharing, I think.
Okay, I'll stop sharing mine.
Yeah, just I don't know what in the world happens on YouTube when you're doing
that. Let's just keep it at 3. Now, the idea is, and this is what I meant, as soon as you think about something that varies, you have to have a variable. Now, for anybody, this is V2 code, just to make sure that you're following. I have a continuation section that has 3 lines. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have a random number, right? Now, this is the part you want a number between 1 and 3 in this case, right? I think that should do what I'm thinking. Let me try it out first. Yeah, it gave me 1, give me 3. So random, you give it the minimum number, the maximum number, but that number, I want to have it as my index or whatever it is. And now, message box, I want to string split messages. And I want to get a random index from it. And what that should do basically is either, let me see, oh, because I want to split it in new lines, by new lines. The third message, second message, you know, it is at random. If I had more numbers, of course. So basically, you have a variable, new line separated. You have a random number taken into a variable as well. So you have two variables. And then using the string split on the messages based on new lines, I just select one of the indexes, because you can definitely just say number 1 for the first one, number 2 for the second one. I guess that concept is fairly simple, right? Now, if you had 20, it would be a number between 1 and 20. And I would just put the index there that is randomly generated.
Click the link I just sent you in Telegram.
Okay, let me see.
This is basically how I approached it.
Okay.
So that you
Right.
switch the file where the things are, and then you had to get a count of how many there are, which is what it is saying. And then it would just randomly select one, and I copied it to the clipboard, but you know,
Right. So you read a specific file and you went line by line to get how many lines it had. That's it. And then you got the random, which is exactly my step here, the random. The random would be from 1 to the last line, depending on how many lines there were. And then you use the file read line into the clipboard for that particular, where did you put the line number? Oh, here, random row. I didn't see it, sorry. So the idea that he is suggesting is exactly the same that I'm saying. The only thing is that he's reading it from a text file. So from a text file that has a lot of different lines, he just knows how many lines, grab a random number between 1 and the number of lines, and file read into the clipboard that line that came back. So it would be a random number between 1 and 20, for example.
And the random command is different because it is V1 here.
Yes. So in this case, in V1, the random, you had to specify a parameter that would take the random number. In V2, it is more intuitive. You use the random and put it in a variable. It's just the same. It's just that you don't need this additional parameter to get a random number. You just put it in a variable like that.
mention what version he's using.
V1 still.
Yeah. Okay. So V1, this is the way how you would do random. You would put a number here. In this case, instead of that, let's say that is 20. Yeah, a random number between 1 and 20, right? This is just the highest number in that file. So that's why he's using a variable there to have the highest.
I had showed this script to Mace at one point, and he was like, "Oh, we could optimize that." And I forget the approach he took, but we were doing it in we spent like an hour and a half on it. It was stupid because it was, you know, and it turns out that 2 lines, the 1 and 2, really was the fastest approach to get the count of how many rows there were. Like,
in my case, I wouldn't need to get the count. I just read the line. I just read the file into variable and use the string split on n and just get. I don't have to know how many lines there are. I just.
Well, you do.
Oh, for the random, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well.
Wait, so how would I use? How do I use like the first example in V1?
Yeah, just
the lower one.
In this, look like this one here.
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking for. Yeah.
In V1,
so that one work in V1.
Yeah, definitely. So the only difference here is the random command. That's it. So this would be random row 1 to whatever the number of lines.
I also tend to, I use V1 still, and I just wrap the random into a function.
Yeah, you see, Hellbent is what you do there. Like, I want to have a function. Yeah, V2 is going to make a lot of functions for you. Message box, everything is a function now. But basically, it's the same thing. I'm not row index, so row index. That would, let me just copy this. I think the only difference here is that I do not need the quotation marks because I'm going to use that. And this is for V1. That should do the same thing. Let me see, hold on. Oh, I have to force an expression now. Let me see. Oh, right. It doesn't allow single quotes. Yeah, I have more issues
That's
coding
cool.
in V1 than V2, actually. Oh, shoot, hold on. Yeah, so if I do that, notice that it would continue doing the, let me add the L trim here to remove these tabs at the beginning. That removes everything to the left. So those empty spaces. So now, again, it's the same concept. Notice for those people thinking that switching from V1 to V2 is going to be hard, look, it's the same code. The only thing is I didn't have to use L trim because V2 knows to do that automatically. I did have to use the colon. I don't need this. And I had to put the quotation marks around text. And this is now a function instead of a...
Isaiah.
Yeah.
I pasted some code into the Telegram chat.
Yeah.
This is what I use to accomplish a similar thing. But I can spin each message word by word. I use spin syntax to pick out each word of the message.
Okay, let me double check. We have only like 3 more minutes, so I'm gonna just grab this, test it. I mean, oh, right, V2. I see. Yeah, it's the same code. I didn't change much. So for most people, it's not gonna be that hard change. So what you did is you have a string. This is a literal string. You have a function that does what we're asking for. You go and matching the string manually, basically. Yeah. And then you just return the string. Right. Now you have another get random element. So what you're doing is a way more complex, more involved. Yeah. Because your data is more involved, yeah, I would assume.
If it also makes it to where your messages are more unique.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so this actually generates random stuff, is what you mean.
Well, so you would do spin tags in there. So you could put names in there, you could put different messages in each one of those. So right. Like word one could be hello, hi, how are you?
And
greetings.
The second part would be the...
Yeah, you could put names or whatever. And
all right. Yeah, that's what I mean. So basically you're getting random words between these two objects, basically. Yeah. Right. Okay. Awesome. I understand. So I will not go too deep into that because not many people use regular expression matches, but what you are doing is manually matching line by line to get exactly what you needed. So this is great. There are many ways of solving this, but for the person who was asking, just having it like this, and this is V1 code, I'm gonna just paste it in Zoom's chat for your reference.
Oh, thank you very much, man.
From there,
just gonna ask.
Yeah, no worries. So you can go from there, learn what is going on. This is V1 syntax, so it should work just fine.
Here
okay,
is
thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
I think we have to move to the next call, guys.
Okay,
And
awesome. See you next call.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you
very much. Bye.
Bye.